session. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A. I'm getting feedback from somewhere. Section 20, in the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the school committee is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. So, is something on in there? Because I can hear myself talking.
It sounds like it's coming from,
I think it's mine.
is it coming from here?
Is your mic on also?
Is it coming from your
This one?
iPad?
No, mine's off.
Or your phone? Because it sounds like it's coming right from where you are.
Yeah, you don't need to log into the meeting. How do I log out?
Oh. It's an Etch-a-Sketch, just shake it.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can leave that if you. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so the meeting number, for anyone trying to join us, the access code is 173-334-6196. The password is Tuesday. I think that's enough. I do have phone numbers there if anyone wants them. Okay, the first item on our agenda is approval of the warrant.
So move?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any question on the warrant? Hearing none. All those in favor, Mrs. Bond? Aye. Ms. Simon?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy? Mr. Foss?
Aye.
Chairman votes aye, and that's 401. Oh, I don't know.
No.
Do we? No,
Only
okay.
executive.
No, it's just a habit from the
Right.
online meetings.
Mhm.
Tough habit to break, you know. Some of them aren't on. Okay, the next item is approval of minutes of September 8th, 2020. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. Any question or comment on those? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? No? Okay, it's 5-0. Public participation is for members of the audience who would like to mention or ask about something that is not on the agenda. If it's on the agenda, we'll try to get your questions in on that item. But if there's something not on the agenda, is there anyone? Okay, moving on. Information and reports, student representative. Do we have a student
She
representative?
should be here remotely. Sarah here?
Yes, Sarah's here.
Okay. Hi, Sarah.
Where are you, Sarah?
Sarah, do you have a report?
Okay. So first, despite the whole like equity reports that I usually do give,
You're on mute.
I wanted to give like a school-wide report first. So what I did was can you hear me? So what I did was
Sarah, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just can't hear her.
Do you want to try again?
Can you hear me now?
Shouldn't be.
Sarah's coming through
Not
very
full
loud and
volume.
clear here.
We'll see.
No, it's get quite an interesting background.
Is it working now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now? Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yes.
So what I said before was usually I give the equity reports, but right now I would like to give a school-wide like student report that a normal representative from the student council would give. So as we know, students like went back to school last week. For me especially, it was a very mixed feelings experience. There were some things that I liked about it, some things I didn't, and that's exactly what happened across the entire student population. Half of us really liked all remotes, half of us really liked going in person to seeing our friends, but half of us just liked to stay at our house without having a mask to wear. So what I did was like the past like 2 days, I asked students to give some feedback that I would now present to everyone. One of the things that one of the students said was how like each teacher made each class different and each student's experience different, which I think is true across all the students. I would say that the way a teacher guides the classroom, that really affects the class. It really affects how the student learns. Another thing was how the Wednesday at Burlington High School is an all remote day. So we have 7 periods, 40 minutes each, back to back with 10 minutes break. And for a lot of students, it was too much, and it was actually too much for teachers as well. It was too rushed. We felt like most of the times as students joined, we only had like 20 minutes left of class, which was not that great because if we did work in those 20 minutes, we would have more homework to do later on. That was one concern that a student raised up. Another thing was how like sometimes the teacher would go overtime, so we would have less time or maybe even no break, and we would have to immediately join the next class. And that was like not fair because we didn't have time to take breaks in between, and also for most of us, even lunchtime was not enough. Like a lot of kids at home, they have to make their lunch, especially as parents like go to work. So I think that was also another concern that a student raised up. This next one is actually specific to a specific class, which is the ceramics class. A student expressed how they cannot use clay at all because it's like recycled over and over again. So a student proposed the idea that why can't each student receive like a sample of clay that is sent home to them so that they can use it that semester and they can recycle it within themselves. So that was a concern specific to that class. I don't know how you specifically would take that up. I think you would have to go through like the art department and all of that, but that's what one of the students talked about. Another thing was how only one of my teachers asked us like other responsibilities that we have to do at home. I know that a lot of students have to take care of siblings or cook food or like there's many other things to do, and I think it should have been almost like all of the teachers who ask that from students. We have a lot of things to do at home besides just school, so it really bummed me that it was just one of my teachers who asked how the situation was like at home, and I think that's really important. Another thing was about mask breaks. Either we did not receive any mask breaks or either like teachers had different directions according to each class, so it got extremely confusing. But when it comes to mask breaks, is it like, do we each do it at our own times? Like if we want to take a mask break, or does the whole class do it together? It was a lot of confusion last week, and obviously teachers are working on it. Teachers know how much process this whole thing is, so it's going to take time. I get that. So that was a whole another concern. And then the last thing was technology. A lot of teachers, like the Wi-Fi used to stop and like it would log them out of the Google Meet. Another thing was how like one of my teachers like literally got kicked out of it like multiple times. So like half of our class was just wasted because of that. Most of our teachers were also glitching a lot. So we could not hear them properly. The video was off sync and all of that. So that was also another concern. And the last thing that I want to say is to commend all the teachers and all the faculty who's working to make this happen. I know that it has been a lot of trouble. We are all learning together. So I just want to commend all the teachers who are working together to make sure that we get the education and the classes and everything all set. I know that a lot of teachers are like staying up so late, like they're doing all their best. So I just want to say thank you to all of them. And that will be it for my student report for now.
Thank you. Anyone have any comments or questions for Sarah?
It's excellent feedback. Thank you.
Sarah, we heard from students that lunch is really strange
Yeah.
because it's almost silent, that you have to have an assigned seat like on an airplane, and everyone's on their phone, and it's just because usually the CAF is pretty loud and social, and it was a strange experience. That was some feedback I got.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, I was gonna say it slipped off my mind, but I was in cohort E, so I had lunch on Thursday last week, and I literally walked in and I just saw like desks lined up, and I was like, no, I want to sit in like assigned seats. Um, but unfortunately, like we just have to deal with that. But yeah, I mean, you get to see new faces around you, which is nice. But other than that, yeah, it was very awkward. The cafeteria was very quiet.
One day will end.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Martha.
I also want, Dr. Conti, if you could make sure that, I don't know if Sarah should go, or you can make sure that Mr. Sullivan heard these different feedback, because often I know there's a sense of, here's the report and nothing happens, and I do think things happen, but we don't always know about it. And so I just want to make sure that, Mr. Sullivan knows about these so he can work on improving it. And I appreciate, Sarah, your mature understanding that we're all working on this and the teachers are doing a really good job, even with these kind of glitches. And some of them are totally out of our control, and other ones can be maybe worked on. Actually, I know one of our neighboring school districts was planning to go hybrid and had to go complete remote because somebody hacked the school district system. Are we pretty well protected that those kind of outside hacks through Google are not so likely to happen? I was a little scared of that.
We put a lot of measures in place to prevent it from happening.
Okay.
I think usually the case is that if a hacker or a thief wants to get in, they'll find a way to get in. But we don't take that lightly, and we are constantly updating some of our measures.
Good.
We're constantly doing a network refresh right now. We're doing updates as soon as we can usually. So again, I keep my fingers crossed that we're doing our jobs, and I hope that's the case.
Thank you.
Ms. Simon, I would bet that Mr. Sullivan's listening in right now.
Okay, great.
Anyone else have comments for Sarah? All right, thank you, Sarah. That was an excellent report. We will do our very, very best to clear up some of those bugs, shall we call them. Okay, next item on our agenda is subcommittee reports. Anyone have a subcommittee report?
Yeah,
Go
I'd
ahead.
like to do a report from the Equity Committee. We have not met since the last school committee meeting, but we will be meeting this week. And I believe that our agenda will be to continue to look at ways to advance the action plan. And I'm hoping we'll pick some priorities because there's just so much to do, but maybe we can focus on some things that we can get done right now. And so I'm looking forward to that conversation with the committee. I also know that the staff is continuing to reach out to individual students and families. I hope that our teachers and students are getting the support they need. And I also just wanted to report that from where I sit, there seems to be support among the town meeting members for the warrant article to fund the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion position. And I'm personally hopeful that a majority of town meeting members will see the wisdom of addressing the issues of diversity and equity in town. So that's my report from the Equity Committee. And Mr. Larkin, he might have something else to say later.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Carl.
I can speak briefly on the Joint School Committee Board of Health Subcommittee. We met this past Thursday via WebEx. And we had a mostly very general conversation about, it started with the coronavirus pandemic and the intersection of public health and schools. We talked about how, well, let me back up. It was Martha and myself, Dr. Weiner and Dr. Saltzman, and Susan Luminella was there as well. And we talked about the intersection of public health and schools. The four of us are, plus other members of this committee, plus other members of the Board of Health, are in nearly constant contact. So we discussed more medium and long-term goals for the joint subcommittee. We talked at length about the details of testing and if you are a close contact, what you need to do and be in quarantine, and what the criteria are for being released from that quarantine. And then we ended with discussing race issues as a pandemic, and we're running out of time, but all four of us recognize that it is an issue that needs to be addressed head on, and the Board of Health and School Committee can possibly partner with other groups within town, such as BAR or some of maybe the Board of Selectmen, to see where the intersections can be and what progress we can make moving against that pandemic as well. And we decided to meet quarterly unless additional meetings are needed. Martha, did I miss anything?
No, I think that's it. I would add that since the meeting, I've also tried to get clarification for myself to understand this issue of what's a quarantine, when does a negative test mean that someone's released from quarantine and when not. And it is confusing. I know that if students are sent home, that there is information that the nurses will share with the families. And I just want to encourage all of us to it may be very frustrating to have a healthy kid at home, but it seems to be keeping everyone safe for now. And I just, let's keep trying to do the best. Actually, the specific thing is that when people if people need to go get a COVID test, there is a specific test that is needed to be able to allow your child to come back, and that's the molecular test. And that's written in the information that people get from the nurses. They can always call the nurse or Barbara Conley to get the information if they don't have it right at hand. And there are many different places where you can get that report, but there is a free place that's available to anybody in Massachusetts. So I wanted to say it's called Stop the Spread, is where you look for it on the internet, and there are a number of places. None of them, unfortunately, are real close, but there are places in Salem and Everett and Framingham. So depending on what's more convenient for you. It's not close, but there are free tests available if that's an issue for anybody.
Okay, the one thing I learned is that you cannot test out of quarantine. If you have to quarantine, even if you're negative every single day, you still have to quarantine, which is kind of hard to swallow, but, you know, you do what you got to do. That's a pandemic. One other thing I wanted to say, Martha, when you brought up the equity position, obviously, it's kind of a topic that we're going to get into at some point, whether it's immediately after town meeting or whether it's in the spring when we talk about our next budget, or the winter, really. But I would like to ask the superintendent, he and I had a discussion that I found enlightening, and I've also had some discussions with other people. I question the model of having a director. I think the problem is one that needs to be solved in whatever the best way possible is, and I think the model that maybe sounds kind of interesting to me is having people that work directly with the students as opposed to a director position. But Eric, as we go forward, I'm sure you will look at all those models and let us know what you think is the best way to approach it.
Yeah, I think what we discussed, just not to be hiding anything. I mean, we talked about there are many districts that have these positions, and there are different ways to do it. And I think we need to talk to them and see what's working and what's not working. And I don't want to put someone in a position or have there be one position and have everyone believe that any sort of diversity or equity or racial injustice is fixed. So I think we need to, it's the work that this person does that I think we need to define, and you know, identifying the role, the title, all that other stuff, I think is honestly, we just need to see what's going to work. And so, and I think we just need to look at some of the successes and with some districts that have done this a little bit ahead of us. And so I'm looking forward to the conversation. It is a community conversation, not just a school conversation. And I think it's an important conversation for us to have. And where this all ends up, I think I'm sort of excited to be part of that process. And ultimately, I just want whomever it is, and I hope it's more than one person over time, that the person is successful. That's sort of, I think, what my investment is in. Madam Chair, if it's okay, Sarah wanted to speak on the equity issue, and I think she had just done her student report. So can I just make some time for Sarah back, if that's okay? Mm-hmm. Sarah, Mr. Larkin got to me on my text, so he said you wanted more time. So please.
Can you hear me?
I can. Yes.
Okay. So last report was the student body report. So for this one, for the equity committee, as Ms. Simon said before, we didn't meet yet. We have a meeting this week. So I don't have anything specific relating to that. But I would like to point out the school committee members to check out first, like the Burlington Public Library's social justice series. I think what the library is doing, it ties in very well with the whole issue with director of DEI. So and the problems that are happening in the town right now. So while checking that out, I would like you to be participating in the events. Aside from that, my friend Prapti Shah, who's also in the equity committee, we both made a video regarding microaggressions, implicit or explicit bias, and we incorporated actual racist and hate incidents that happened to students in either like Burlington High School, the middle school, or the elementary schools, and it was across the entire school district. So once that video is published and once that video is put out there, I will send the link to Ms. Gilread. So I would like you guys to also watch that before the next meeting, which is in 2 weeks. And along with that, we also have another source for more incidents that we have apart from the ones that we use in the video. There have been many, so I would also like each of the committee members to read that over and like be able to discuss it in the next meeting. For me, that's it for now. So I think I'm done here for today.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Sarah.
Okay. Anyone else on the, on any of the equity committee or the subcommittee reports? No. Ways and Means, is Mr. Eiler on?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nothing.
Renovate and make into a podcasting room. So if I look-
Oh, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Actually, I didn't have anything to report, but I did want to mention something I don't think we publicly let know is that Roger Riggs is now the school subcommittee chair. And we have Steve Moore and myself will be on the subcommittee for a little bit longer until after town meeting, when I believe we'll have 2 additional members come in to take our place, and Ways and Means will be fully staffed again. Back to you, Roger.
Yes, thank you, Roger, to connect with me, Mr. Eiler. So we look forward to having an experienced person dealing with the school budget, and Roger has done it for many years, so I think he'll be a great asset for us, so thank you.
John, are you leaving us?
You'll no longer have the easy time I was giving you.
John, how can you do that to us? You're not allowed to leave. Okay. Coronavirus update from the superintendent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I want to sort of talk about some specifics as we go down, and as is typical, a lot of our agenda items are going to be linked. There's a district working group that we put in place, I think over a month ago, where we had the 10 different categories that were defined by the Parabola group, and there were leadership sort of people facilitating those. So I was facilitating the first 2 principals, and I have a group of about 15 or 16 people, and we've been meeting weekly. I did miss a couple weeks, but there are parents on it, there are staff members on it, there's a nurse on it, there's an administrator on it, and it's been a really invaluable source of feedback for me. So a lot of what I'm going to discuss tonight, I think the feedback was provided by this group last Thursday. So I just have been really looking forward to that. So elementary schools, you know, started a week ago Thursday, where we brought in grades 1 to 5 on Thursday and Friday, and got to every school on Thursday and Friday, and again with Mr. Larkin, with Patrick, and the kids were just incredibly excited to be in school, to see their friends. I think the teachers were really excited to have kids back, and I think the logistics needed some work. The drop-off and the pickup routines, I think, took longer than people expected or wanted, and I think that was some feedback that we got. I do think they've been getting better as people are sort of learning, you know, what's going on. I was really excited, and Ms. Ellis from Town Meeting is our Town Meeting rep on the working group, and she articulated this last Thursday, but it was something I had commented on to myself, but I want to give her credit for stating it. It was great to drive by and see full bike racks, and hadn't seen full bike racks in elementary school, for decades. And so it was just great to see. And so I think obviously weather is going to impact us, but I thought the start was very good. We did have 6th grade orientation and 9th grade orientation over those 2 days. And again, there was a parent of a 9th grader on the call, and she thought that it was great to have the first look at the high school because they had never been here before. I think the high school is a large building. I still think there were some classes. The tour could have gone on longer, but I think that's always the case with some of our students in terms of finding their way around the high school. So I think that was it. That was the so that was the sort of the first 2 days that we started. I also want to make sure that I also acknowledge that the teachers teaching fully remotely have done just an incredible job, and it's a really difficult job to build connections. I think attempting this in March when you already have a relationship built with your class, I think is hard enough. To start the year off and to try to establish that relationship. And Mr. Foss, I'm almost embarrassed saying this in front of you, but establishing this relationship right off, I think is a real challenge. And I think that our teachers have really stepped up in doing that. And there are many teachers, as we'll talk about further on the agenda, who are teaching classes and back in the classroom who have been doing other roles in the district. And so they're, again, I think, as someone articulated, everyone feels like a first-year teacher, which is an incredibly exhausting year if you've ever gone through it. And we're all feeling like we're in our first year of our jobs again. So I just want to recognize, their contributions. I think transportation came together at the last minute, and I think in hindsight, I probably would have cut off the parent requests earlier so we could have had more time. And I think we really tried to get as much information as who needed transportation as we could, and we took that as late as we could. But again, want to recognize Bob and for just doing an incredible amount of work trying to organize buses. We're still working through that, but I'd like to remind people that it always takes us a couple weeks at the start of the year to sort of get the buses figured out. We did have some students who were assigned to buses who are fully remote. So again, we were removing those kids. That creates more spots, and we were looking to replace those spots. And I think that as we get better information, we can fine-tune the routes. And as always, it's about communication. So we're trying to make sure that we're communicating as often as we can to make sure that we are sort of making adjustments and sort of making people aware of those adjustments. I have to say that our kids have been incredibly compliant, and I don't mean that in any sort of pejorative way. I think the kids have been taking the health concerns seriously in terms of social distancing and mask wearing. Even when the kids have been taken outside and have the opportunity for mask breaks, when they're running around outside, a lot of the elementary kids I've noticed just leave their masks on. I think it just becomes what did someone tell me? It's almost like wearing shoes now. Like, why would you take your shoes off when the kids just have their masks on? And as always, the kids are the easiest to adjust to change, and we're having to work through some of that as adults. But I do think I want to acknowledge that our kids have been positive. The support from the Board of Health continues. I think we talked to Susan Luminello. Patrick and I always ask her if there's a limitation on the number of times we can call her, and she says no. I'm assuming she's going to tell us to stop soon, but she's been wonderful. Our nursing staff has been, again, very good at trying to be proactive, and I think that's really taking their cues from our nurse leader, Barbara Conley, who worked incredibly hard to get schools open. And I think now that they're open, we're really trying to operate in a way that makes sense and protects everybody. So I think that's the challenge. And going into this, we really did feel there were it wasn't about eliminating risk, it was about trying to manage risk, and that there was risk to returning that needed to be managed, but there was also risk to having the kids out of school. And so, again, I'm not saying everything is right, but providing parents choices, having a remote choice, having a hybrid return choice, the choices actually made the planning more complex and have really resulted in some additional staffing needs. And I think it would have been simpler to not have choice, even though I don't think that would have been the right thing to do. So a lot of people put a tremendous amount of time and energy and effort into making sure schools could open and did open. The administrative staff, again, Patrick, Bob, Mary Hood, the whole central office team, Nicole Kasha, everybody has worked incredibly hard to have the opportunity to open, even with the mistakes that we had. And I think I want to also make sure that I acknowledge that we are making mistakes. We're trying to adjust as quickly as we can. And the parents who I've spoken with have been very gracious in terms of saying they're, again, I don't think we can't continually make mistakes, but I think things will always get better. But I think they've been very appreciative of the effort that the teachers and staff have put into to have schools open. So, like I said, sending the kids home safely to the right house is a win every day. And so I think that's what I've been sort of taking this one day at a time, 1 week at a time. And again, hopefully we'll be getting through our second week. It feels like we've been in a month already, but we're really only in our second week. And we really are trying to take this a safe day at a time. And I think that's where we are, where we're headed. So again, it's just, again, I just couldn't be more proud of the Burlington teachers and staff to have us in a position where kids who want to be in school can be in school. So I think that was my opening report.
Any questions? Let's let Carl go first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Conti, last week at the Board of Health School Committee Subcommittee meeting, Ms. Luminello mentioned a series of drills to kind of practice notification of any positive tests. Have those drills gone through, and if so, how'd they go?
The drills have been more like scenarios that we would work through. Because to be quite honest with you, we've had real life situations that we've had to work through at the same time we're doing the drills. So I think we're working through both. So I think that, again, I think, Mr. Foss, I think communication is always going to be the issue. I think for some, we're never going to communicate enough. And then for others who are trying to protect some of the information, there's always that balance. So I think what we're struggling with right now is the level of communication to have. I think the Board of Health wants us to direct a lot of people to the Board of Health for these type of answers. And it's just not something that comes naturally to school people, because we want to answer all the questions and we want to be in control. So I think we're all learning new skills, and that's a new skill that we're trying to learn. But I think responding and not reacting is really what we're trying to tell people. We are going to have cases. We are going to have to manage situations. And the key is to try to do that in a way that's smart and in a way that's guided by science and the Board of Health and the Mass DPH, and just to make sure that we're communicating as much as we possibly can. And so I want to make sure I answer your question. The drills are overlapping with real life scenarios. And so obviously our attention is going to the real life scenarios, but we are focusing on different Susan's putting together different case studies for us, and we're trying to do it as best we can.
Thank you. Martha?
I just, after talking about the opening and how hard everyone's working, I just wanted to very specifically thank all the teachers because it's hard enough being a teacher. It's a lot of work. It's strenuous in so many ways, and I know how much our teachers really put into it. And to have to do it in these conditions is just additionally that much harder. And I appreciate, and I think I probably speak for the whole committee, but I just want to thank people for all the work they're doing, and whether it's teachers or other staff, administrators, everybody, the custodians, everybody's putting in, more than we can, I'm just so delighted that everybody's working so hard, even though we still need to look at where the problems are and where the glitches are, and things may not go great all the time. Teachers like things to be perfect and to not, I think that Dr. Conti and Mr. Larkin have talked about forgiveness and flexibility, and I want to just say that, there is, a need for flexibility and forgiveness for all of us, for each other, and also for oneself. And I wish I could come to everyone's classroom and thank you myself, but that's probably not a wise idea, even if I could do that. So I wanted to make a big deal about how we actually have had school for a week and a half, and how impressive all of it's going, despite the kind of glitches that have been, certainly expected. So, thank you.
Anyone else have any comments? Catherine? No?
No, I really wanted to build on what, what you were saying, Mrs. Simon, because I can't even imagine coming in under these conditions. And I think, you've described it the way I think most teachers are feeling. It's like your first year. It's all something new. It's something different. You get frustrated when there are glitches. It throws off, for lack of another word, your groove. And I really appreciate, it seems to me the students are taking a really mature view of it. And I've been looking at some of the comments on social media, and I've seen a lot of parents really compliment and thank, the whole school system for getting the kids back into school, for the ones who want to be in school. And it seems, I don't know what kind of feedback we've been getting on the ones who are 100% remote. I don't know, if are any students that maybe we can bring in to fill us in, who are doing 100% remote. But again, I really appreciate everything everybody's doing, and I do understand how difficult it is, and I think, we do have to be extremely understanding, and I think keep the communication open, because again, if you don't communicate what's not working, or even what is working, you can't fix it, or you can't continue to build on it. So again, thank you.
Tom, you're going to stay quiet?
Yeah, I second everything that you said.
Okay, I'd just like to comment on that topic that I'm afraid to jinx it. So I've never seen a school department work so hard on anything as I have these past 2 months especially. It's been an incredible challenge to make all this happen, and kudos to everyone who's been a part of it, and to Dr. Conti for having to lead the parade. And now I have a question based on the return to school that was asked of me by one of the PAC offices, the CPAC offices. And I know that you did answer her, Eric. I wanted to ask you again, sort of in a public setting, if there's any plan for bringing children who have special needs, who really need more time in school. Is there any plan for getting them back in for more than the time that they're in now?
Madam Chair, I think my response to the parent was that we are in our second week, and I just want to at least get through sort of 10 to 14 days, and maybe just a third week, just to see that our positivity sort of rates stay low, and that our precautions are mask wearing, distancing, hand washing are actually working. And so, not that we wouldn't expect them not to work. I just think I want things to continue on in a steady way. As this committee knows, that the first students we brought back were our high need students, and I'm assuming the first students that we would expand the opportunity to stay would be our high need students as well, Madam Chair. So probably, I think what I wanted to do is sort of answer as concretely as possible, probably not till the beginning of October. And I know that seems far away, but it's not. It's just a couple weeks away, week and a half. We'll start to make some of those, start to have some of those conversations, and we'll see how we do. A fear that we all have is if there's large movement between in-person and remote. And again, I think one of the factors that allowed us to open in person and provide 6 feet of spacing was we had 400 elementary students choose to be fully remote. So we created essentially a 5th elementary school, and that emptied out our existing elementary schools enough where we could do that. If all 400 remote students choose to return back to school, that would that would be a problem. So something would have to give there. So everyone's entitled, but we have to work through some of those things. Doesn't impact the population, the high needs populations, Madam Chair, that you were discussing. I think those conversations will happen first, and I think what we tried to say is we wouldn't be allowing students to switch until the quarter, which is around the first part of November. But if we have to make an adjustment again for high need students, we can do that sooner than that. I just think we need to make sure that our positivity rates are staying low, and again, that would be the first population that we would make that adjustment for.
Okay, I'm not sure this is the appropriate time for me to ask this question, but I'll ask it anyway. In managing all of these various classes, remote, hybrid, et cetera, how many people have you had to hire, either full-time or part-time or temporary or?
Well, again, I was asking Terry, Mrs. O'Mara, we were going through that in preparation for the meeting, and we still have a lot of organizing to do, and we still have a lot of positions that are unfilled. But sort of what we put together was we have 17 interim teachers that we had to bring on. So again, a rough, and we looked at just letters of hire. So with 400 fully remote students, I think we have 22 classroom teachers. We had 21, and we just had to add a 4th grade section because the class sizes were getting too large. We wanted to have some equity between the in-person class sizes and the remote class sizes. So we had 22 classroom teachers. Many of those teachers were specialists that we asked to do a different role for this year. And again, I want to make sure I thank them incredibly. So our reading specialists, our math specialists are now back in classrooms. And that only got us so far. We had to then, we tried to accommodate folks who needed a remote accommodation in terms of their personal needs. So we then tried to staff it there. But everyone we took out of a school building who was in a classroom, we needed to replace that position in the classroom. And then the remote academy that we're calling it, again, this group of 400 kids needs some specialists. They needed some special education teachers. Essentially, we staffed the school. And again, Sean Musselman, our outstanding science coach, is the coordinator, the facilitator. And I think, as I mentioned at a prior meeting, I've always sort of wondered about having a teacher-led school, and this is sort of the experiment. So Sean is doing an incredible job, I think, as are the remote teachers. Ms. Bond, we will survey some of the fully remote students, and parents, just to get some feedback separately. But I think from what I'm hearing from teachers is it's incredibly hard, and they are trying to do the best job that they can manage. And I have no doubt that our teachers will do a great job. But to answer your question, Mrs. Monaco, I think we had 17 additional interim teachers that we brought on, and we cleared out a lot of our instructional assistants, a lot of our tutors, our licensed teachers, and we just sort of eliminated their instructional assistant responsibilities and put them into a classroom as a teacher. So we've tried to reallocate as much as we can, but we are certainly have more teachers than we would have normally run without the COVID preparations.
Are you finding that having moved instructional assistants from their original posts is leaving a hole in the instruction because they're not able to do what they were doing if they're teaching now?
I think it's leaving some holes where, again, maybe a frustration for me is we've spent a decade putting together, at the elementary level especially, a tiered instructional framework where we can intervene with students pretty quickly, where we can instructionally group students and target their needs. And I think that's had to take a bit of a backseat to what we're doing now. But again, our class sizes we've tried to keep as small as possible, and we're trying to really focus on safe routines, relationships, learning. Honestly, every day that we can work on that relationship is a positive for us, because I think we want to stay open. We want to open fully, but we also have to prepare to be fully remote too. So I think we're trying to have those parallel paths. So to answer your question, yes, I believe we are not doing some things that we used to do, and we're not. And that's true at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. And I don't think we're going to be able to completely do what we used to do until we go back to full school days and full presence.
Is that because we don't have the money to spend to backfill those positions?
I think some of it would have we're trying to be somewhat cautious with money, but I also think it's the schedules, it's the time, it's the cohorting of students where we can't mix students, which is something that we do all the time. And so I think there are some limitations to how we're organizing the student's day that is also causing some challenges. So we've tried to create as many one-room schoolhouses as we can across the district, again, with the least success in high school, just because that's the way the high school works. But I think that's one of the challenges, Mrs. Monaco, is it's not for lack of money or staffing completely. It's really for it's a completely different educational structure.
What about those positions other than teaching staff, clerical, custodial? Are we filling those positions yet? It seems, especially with custodial, we should be.
We should be, and I think Bob and I talked about that. We during the summertime, we weren't sure whether we were going to be fully remote or even open, and so it really didn't make sense for us to fill positions that we felt we were going to have to then reduce right away. So as soon as we got back to school and had kids in school, I think we were going to move forward with the position. So we held until we knew we were going to be back in person, and now that we're back in person, we're moving forward. The cleaning, again, I think even walking around here, every highly touched surface is being wiped down all the time. And even in the central office, all the doorknobs, everything are being cleaned and wiped down, hand railings. The custodial staff is just doing a great job. So,
one last question.
Mm-hmm.
The 8th grade accelerated math class that is always the feeder into our high school math programs, have we had to eliminate that this year?
I think they're doing it differently, Mrs. Monaco, and I want to check, and I'll get you a very specific answer as soon as I do some research. But my understanding is that is going to be an Edgenuity course. So they're going to pull some students out, and there's going to be a remote curriculum that is the Algebra 1 curriculum, which is what I think which is what you're referring to. So let me just check on numbers, and I just want to make sure I'm answering that correctly, because we can't mix kids, but we are going to try to give kids the advanced math
Yeah.
experience remotely.
I hope you're able to accomplish that, because I hate to think of these 8th graders who really need the accelerated math program to, I don't want to see them fall behind.
I believe we are, so I just want to make sure I'm telling you how we're doing it correctly.
All right, thank you.
I have a detailed
Sure, go
question.
ahead.
Just in terms of the additional interim teachers, how many of those are for maternity leaves? Approximately.
Well, again, I think we have 9 permanent teachers that we hired as well, so I'm just trying to juggle in my head. So,
Or-
so we probably had 26 teachers that we added. I think we have probably I think 4 currently,
Okay.
and those maternities are ending at different times. So interim may be for a particular, like until November, or
Right.
interim could be all year, depending on how long we stay in our current configuration.
Okay. So out of the teachers we had to hire on, some of them were about 4, so were for maternity leaves.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on this? Okay, do you want to continue?
Yeah. Mrs. O'Mara just texted me. She said only about 4, so I look, thank goodness I guessed correctly. No, that's fine. Student enrollment, Madam Chair, if that's okay, I just wanted to go over some numbers with you all. That the high school cohort A is about 380 students. Cohort B is 367, so there's some balance between A and B. And then the remote, there's 130 students at the high school. So again, I think we said about 13% remote students at the high school. At the middle school, again, cohort A, 311. Cohort B, 295. Again, tried to balance as best we could. A and B cohorts, high school and middle school work together. So, and we did it mostly by surname. So we tried to keep families together because that made the most sense in terms of coverage. And so, I'm sorry, and then the middle school had 138 students remote. So again, I think the middle school percentage was roughly 18%. And then at the elementary, we had about 24% remote. So it was, again, roughly 400 students are in our remote academy, and then the balance of students are hybrid and in person. And again, the elementary students are going back 5 days a week because of the remote academy, because we have enough room for social distancing without those students there. We don't have enough room at the middle school and high school, so parents are also asking, when are you going to go back full-time? We really can't bring all the middle school students back and all the high school students back and provide social distancing. We may be able to lengthen the day, we may be able to add parts to the day, but we are not going to be able to merge the cohorts unless we get different public health guidance. So I think those are some of the enrollment numbers where we're at. I will give you sort of total enrollment next meeting in terms of whether we're up from last year or down. We did have a lot of move-ins, and Robin in student information had a busy summer, not only with all that she did to prepare for COVID, but we did have families move into Burlington and new registrations as well. So again, someone else we need to thank is the student information officer, Robin. She's done a remarkable job. Staffing, Madam Chair, I'm just moving down the agenda. We did have about 17 interim teachers who we've added, and about 9 permanent teachers. We still have lots of outstanding hires in terms of perm subs, in terms of some instructional assistants and some tutors that have moved into teaching positions. We're trying to be careful about filling those positions just because I want to make sure they're absolutely necessary. One of the areas we're struggling with now are substitutes. We need to have, we feel, a trained remote substitute pool. And because if there are teachers who are being tested, or Mrs. Monaco, as you said, can't break a quarantine, we want them to teach remotely, but if they can't teach remotely, then we need to make sure they have coverage. Or if they're not feeling well, if they are actually sick, which people are still getting colds and sick, and we need to make sure we have coverage for their classes as well. So that's been a real struggle for us in terms of finding people and getting them hired. Sharon does a lot of the per diem hiring, and they're just they're getting teaching jobs because just like us, we added 17. Everyone else is adding positions as well, and we're just not we're not finding people. We are bringing back. We just brought back a recent high school graduate back into the high school for a perm sub. I think he just graduated from Plymouth State, so that was great. So we're going back to we're recruiting some of our former students to come in and just help us with some coverage. So I think that was that's kind of what we're doing. Madam Chair, with your permission, I just wanted Bob to talk a little bit about transportation and where we are, just to give a transportation update, because there's lots of changes, and the transportation has really been a limiting factor for us. And again, our challenge is that we offer such a high level of service normally that any degradation in that service, any adjustment to that service feels like a real loss. So interesting to me is at 30% capacity, we're still providing more transportation than many districts do as a sort of as a regular part of their transportation. But Bob has managed all that, so I want to make sure I thank him, and Peg Allegrato, who is working now in his office. So Bob, thank you.
Great. So if I can give two different versions of comments. First, I'm going to start with a positive comment, and that would be to piggyback on what Dr. Conti had said. Not myself, but I want to thank Peg in my office. I want to thank the clerical in all of the buildings, and I definitely want to thank the bus company as well, too. They've been struggling day and night for all the requests that have been coming in, and believe me, there have been a lot of requests. There have been a lot of changes, which I'll move on to in my second comment in a minute, but I definitely want to make sure that they know that I'm saying thank you to all of them. They hear me say it 100 times a day, but it's still not enough. My second comment, which is not so positive, is the simple fact that we do not have the seats on the bus to make the normal request that we would in a typical year. So not only did we reduce the number of riders on each bus, while we are going through those changes constantly, the number of requests that are coming in, we're not able to meet on a timely basis. So while we're trying to respond as fast as we can and trying to make as many changes as we can, again, amongst every one of the schools and all the buses, again, we're not kicking people off buses. So it really sometimes the request can't be met just due to ridership. Sometimes we are able to make some of these requests, but I'm not satisfied, honestly, with the number of requests that I have to say no to, just because, again, it's not the level of service that we normally provide. So I'm aware of it. I'm sure you're all aware of, some of the comments that have come in. Again, are not always positive or have not been positive. I'd love to be able to change that. Hopefully in the future we can change that. But right now, like I said, we are working on looking at ridership, looking at if there are ways that we can, either if people choose to not ride the bus any longer, then a seat will free up. Anybody who was either mislabeled and in the remote, we've removed them or in the process of removing them and freeing up those seats as well. Any siblings, of course, are able to sit together, but we do still have limitations on the capacity of the bus totals. So like I said, we're working through numerous calls. Again, it really is just a timely process, and every request cannot be met.
And we did set some parameters, but I want to make sure that one of the parameters, we couldn't, if we have 30% capacity, we couldn't triple the number of buses to accommodate that. But I think one of the things we are sort of looking at, or that Bob has permission to look at, if we can solve some really significant issues by adding one bus, then that might be something that we come back to you for. And again, it's roughly, again, around what, 65,000 a year for the bus. But I think we need to get the data cleaned up. We need to sort of make sure the remote kids are off, that the seats are identified. We do have seating charts to develop, and we're trying to put as many kids as we can safely following the guidelines that we have. So that's been a challenge, and again, and Bob is handling that incredibly well. And I know you're frustrated because you want to solve every problem, but there's just too many people who want seats, and we don't have the seats.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I have never seen so many little kids delighted to go to school. They are all so happy to be back. Go ahead, Martha.
So I just wanted to remind us that we do need to be sure that students are following all of these new routines on the buses, that they should be sitting in the seats they've been assigned and not clustering together. That, and I understand that, we don't have monitors on the bus right now, that's another cost. It would entail another cost. I hope we don't have to do that. But if there are incidents that you hear about, maybe we could look at some of the video and talk to those students and see, because I would hate for that situation to be the reason why a school had to end up closing down because there was some contamination between different families or whatever, kids who are not in the same cohort. So I just want to remind everyone to make sure that the students understand that that's also part of going to school and following all these routines and wearing the masks correctly and those kinds of things. Thank you.
Bob?
I just want to follow up, so just to make sure that the information is correct. The seating assignments are constantly changing, so I don't even want to call them seating assignments yet. What we're asking the bus company to do and what they're asking the students to do right now is first on, sit in the seat, and then continue from the back forward. So we have that seating assignment.
Yeah.
But then, like I said, because we're constantly changing stops, who's on, who's off, the printed sheet is not an actual printed sheet. It's more reliant on the video that's there on the buses, and then we're relying on a little bit more communication, again, with the bus company and the principals and so forth as well. Just because I have had questions about that, where people or parents have not got an assignment or, again, a child's seat had to change. So I just want to make that clear that that is constantly being updated. So we're working on it right now, the latest one, and we will get that out as soon as we can.
Thank you, and I appreciate you clarifying that because obviously I didn't know all that, those ins and outs of it. But I do think it can, the same point is that students should be sitting in their seats wherever they've been asked to sit, and following those kind of procedures. So, thank you.
Are there any audience questions? No. Okay.
So again, Madam Chair, I'm just moving on down to the school building facilities update. And again, I want to recognize and thank Bob for his work. We did have the second run through of the HVAC system sort of done, and that information was posted. So we have the initial report and the second report that was posted again on our website. I think the improvements were significant to the units that were either not turning on or were underperforming, and I think we just need to continue to monitor that, especially as the weather gets colder. But I think that was just a tremendous amount of work on our staff and on everyone else and some of the service providers that we had. Bob, the air quality testing is continuing. So again, I'll go ahead. I'm waiting to areas go that are yours.
So again, this is where I changed my thank you shift over to Custodians and Maintenance. Again, they're doing tremendous work, as Dr. Conti mentioned earlier. The buildings look great, and the amount of work that we've increased for them and how they're handling it is just truly amazing. I believe that there's a lot of communication going on with the custodians and the principals, and then the staff as well too, just to make sure that building needs are being met. And on top of that, their original tasks are still being met as well too. Like I said, the buildings look great. In regards to the HVAC equipment, our maintenance staff has been a huge help. Countless hours have been put into maintenance on HVAC machines prior to on the first test, and of course the second, to go back and reanalyze or repair or make adjustments. We did use an outside company as well too to come back in and assist us with that. But again, the countless hours that our maintenance staff put in, it truly shows. Some of the numbers were definitely insignificant, or we saw some underperforming or non-performing machines, high numbers actually, and over 100 plus machines they've had to go back into and work on. Now again, this would be typical maintenance. It just would not be done in such a short amount of time. Obviously there wasn't as close of an eye on it as well too, so they really weren't under the pressure of somebody saying get it done and by the start of school. But again, they definitely rose to the task. The new measurements are on the website. I feel confident in saying that now, looking at the results, people really can be in the buildings clearly and have the fresh air coming in. The one thing I do want to add is that we've had a couple of cold days. So as we had discussed in the past, when we're bringing fresh air in from outside, we're going to have these extreme days. And people think extremes are 0 degrees and 110 degrees. The extremes are really about 15 degrees apart, because when you're bringing 60-degree air into a room, it's cold. When you're bringing 85-degree or 80-degree air into a room, it's hot. So again, we don't typically turn on our heat this early in the year, and we really would just kind of rely on modulation of opening the windows a little bit. But now bringing all that fresh air in, not necessarily complaints, even though there have been a few, but we've had a lot of requests to turn the heat on. So again, it's definitely something that we're doing in a timely fashion, just because, like I said, we don't want to have those extreme swings. Tomorrow and the rest of the week, we are looking at 75 plus days. And this is just really the season that we're in. But again, it's back to the HVAC systems. We still want people to leave the machines on. We have had a few instances where they are turned off. We can't really override that. Somebody can definitely come in and shut it off in their individual classroom. So we do want to make sure that people are leaving those on. The choice to open the windows in your space or not is really kind of up to you. But again, more fresh air is definitely better in the pandemic. But like I said, keeping those machines running. A couple other things that I definitely want to make note on. If anyone's driven by Memorial lately, the turf field was just installed on the playground. That was a Warrant article, but we finally were able to schedule the company to come in, and due to the pandemic and so forth, some of those installs got pushed out a little bit. We had to shut it down basically over the weekend to let some of the work cure, but it opened back up on Monday, and I did see some people out there, so that looks great when you get a chance to swing by there. And then just want to comment that the middle school auditorium is underway as well. Again, we were waiting on some equipment and parts to come in for that. So we've had multiple crews in there working on the lighting system, HVAC, new sound system. We're building a new booth. So I'll be able to report back on some of those shortly. But like I said, I know the main focus was definitely on the HVAC, but I don't want to take away from all the other positive and good work that's been going on in the buildings as well. High school floor is something that needs to be continued to address. I know at an earlier meeting we had a projected date of the start of school. What had happened is that the company that did the rip-up of the floor was measuring the water content in the concrete below, and the concrete is saturated with water and holding water. So right now they're going through insurance for a water mitigation program to see if insurance can cover that. It's an additional cost where they have to put an epoxy layer onto the floor to help keep that water vapor from coming in. If not, the company that installs the wood floor would not warranty it, and that would be at our risk. So obviously that's not something that we want to take on. We definitely want to make sure that we can either get the water levels down, and we've been doing that by dehumidifiers. But we really can't get it at a sustainable level where the company would feel confident in putting the floor down. So we're really looking at that mitigation and whether or not the insurance companies will take that on. So right now, we don't have that plan yet. It's been presented to the insurance company, so we know what the estimate would be, but we haven't got a response. So of course, that is pushing the floor install out probably another month.
Okay. Any questions? Carl?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Kuna, you mentioned that yesterday and today were a little bit cooler and people want to start messing with the heat, and I get that, and we're lucky that it's going to get warmer the rest of the week, and looking forward, it's going to be okay. But can you go into a little bit of detail about what the plans are as the weather starts to turn colder and stay cold, and how we're going to deal with keeping the air exchange at a level that gives people peace of mind?
Yep. I'm sorry, through the chair. So we're fortunate in a couple of our buildings, one being Memorial, two being the new wing at the middle school, and some parts here at the high school where we have an electronic system where we can do a lot of that management through the computer. When we get to some of our other buildings that have the univents, we unfortunately don't have that full management system up there. So what we really have to do is we have to control that from the hot water in the boiler. So right now, we're not sending hot water to those machines, and what we have to do is gradually ramp that up, so that way, like, the hottest temperature that can come through the univents is controlled through the water that we're sending it. Normally, when it gets really, really cold, you may be at, let's say, 180 degrees water, but we have to look at less than that, obviously, for right now, which is not ideal for the machine, but the machine is capable of it. When we do turn the boilers on, we may ramp up from 100 to 105 to 110, again, depending on it. So there still are going to be some fluctuations when we have hot and cold days, and even when we're in the middle of winter, a hot and a cold day may be 60 versus 50. So again, most of our systems really only have like a 3 to 4 degree temperature adjustment in the room. That's so that way one room can't be 100 and one room can't be 60. We don't have that freedom. So that being said, we're still going to have a fluctuation of probably like 5 to 10 degrees that the classroom is going to have. So I still think there's going to have to be communication that people need to wear either an extra layer of clothes on certain days, maybe shut the windows a little bit more. But again, it's still bringing that outside air in, so it's really going to be that balance between what the outside temperature versus what the inside of the classroom is. And we're going to try to manage that a little bit just through the hot water system.
So, from what I'm hearing, the exchange it's going to be a little bit colder, but we continue to have that fresh air exchange. Is that what I'm hearing?
So even on a normal operating year, we still bring fresh air into the system.
Yeah.
The thing is that we don't stay at full open capacity all the time. So what the system's designed to do, especially in a univent system or even here, is you have hot and cold decks that just close all the time and open all the time. So when it's when it's cold outside, you're bringing hot air in and you're heating that into the room. When it hits the temperature, it basically shuts the hot air off, but it still sucks the cold air into the room. And then that kind of balances out the temperature. And then when it drops below the set point, shuts and brings hot air back into again. So that's constantly happening throughout the day. Again, some teachers may choose to manually shut that machine off. What we're saying right now is that the extreme difference is going to be the air coming in is going to be a little bit colder, and the system's going to be shutting down less, and it's not going to be blowing as hot of air at an immediate pace. So we're going to be gradually ramping that up. So you're definitely going to have more of an extreme than what you're normally used to. So yes, more layers of clothes when it gets colder.
Thank you, and I appreciate you explaining to my layperson brain. Two more questions, and they're kind of related. Moving forward, is that air exchange going to be tested as the weather turns colder? And as well, we did those initial air quality tests. Are those ongoing as well? Just remind me, please.
Yes, so the second round of air testing was done this week. 2 buildings were not tested, more just due to timing, when the buildings were available and then having the people inside the buildings. So 2 of the buildings are actually being scheduled for later on in this week. So I will get the results back hopefully within another day or 2 for the first 4 buildings, then later on in the week for the second 2 buildings. So we will share those. We did water testing in our buildings as well too, before the opening of school. So we're waiting on those results as well. What I've heard initially is positive, but like I said, I don't want to get too far ahead of it until I have the actual results fully in my hand. But we will continue with the air testing. I know that was a conversation that we had in previous meetings that we were going to try to readdress that once the start of school. There's a financial cost, obviously, to having that air testing done and water testing done. The water testing is something that we hadn't previously discussed, but just given the circumstances of the buildings being shut down, we definitely wanted to look at that. The air testing as well, too, is something that we haven't really committed to saying how long we would do that. But I think at some point we have to have that conversation with this committee to look at, where we would stop or how long we would choose to continue those.
Thank you appreciate it very much.
Anyone else? Eric, what's next?
So again, we've been so incredibly busy with just getting schools open. We do know we have some projects that we, again, as Bob said, that are ongoing from warrant articles. We're trying to get those done, but they have really taken, again, a bit of a backseat for us, but I think we're picking that up soon. The materials, even some of our school supplies have been delayed, especially the ones that are coming from overseas. So I know there are some families and parents waiting on iPad cases, for instance, because they were coming from China. And Bob, I think they arrived. Cases arrived today. So I think that was good news. So again, we had sent the iPads home in iPad boxes, but we'll be sending home cases with the students as soon as we can get them out to the schools. So some of the delays are certainly because the work backs up, but some of the delays are just because materials just aren't arriving when they normally arrive. So what's next, Madam Chair, is the draft school calendar. We're doing this, obviously, yes, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to ask one question, just on the PPE. I know you guys did a really good job in purchasing some in advance, but it's the same kind of thing with the supply and demand. How are you making sure that we continue to stay ahead of that, and how are the supplies? I mean, even, I know it's only a week and a half in, but how are things looking in terms of the hand sanitizer, and are we using more or less? I mean, just want to make sure we're planning ahead to make sure we don't run out of anything as far as that's concerned.
I'll let Bob address the hand sanitizer. The PPE we purchased for 12 weeks, and so we have it for 12 weeks. And I know that the nurses are keeping track of what they're sending out and what sort of I think it's called the burn rate of the PPE they're looking at. And then we're obviously not going to wait until week 12 till we order more. Hoping to get more information again through a month. If it looks like we are going to remain open, which again we're all hoping we do, then we'll probably have to place another order in the next month, is what I imagine. Hand sanitizer, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm going to say for hand sanitizer and cleaners in general, we also went with that guideline of what we would normally use per year and what the state would recommend that we got for the 12 weeks. I believe we purchased a little bit more than that, just because I don't believe the numbers necessarily would have fit our group. So I still kind of feel that we're on a good path right now, but the first week has definitely been eye-opening to us to kind of look around some of the buildings and see how much is being used, what are the high priority areas. So you would obviously say by the cafeterias are definitely being used more than some of the hallways or some of the stairwells, just in this one building. But then when you look at some of the other buildings, you may see certain hallways that are using more. And I don't particularly have a direct answer as to say if this teacher or whatnot is just using more. But again, I think we definitely have enough to get us through the 12 weeks. We have our hand on a few suppliers that have some equipment in stock if we were to need some. So we're constantly just kind of keeping track of what's available. And like I said, I think over the next couple of weeks, we'll continue to monitor that and see, if we're really at our halfway point yet, or if we've kind of used half of our supply already in 2 weeks, then I think we'll have to look to readdress it.
Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, the draft calendar, again, is obviously very late this year. And I just wanted to go through some dates. Part of the challenge for us is we actually, as you know, our teachers have a 187-day contract. Our students have a 180-day school year. We had built a school calendar that allowed our teachers to have some front-loaded professional development for the start of the school year. And after we had agreed to our calendar, then the commissioner shortened the student year by 10 days and sort of messed us all up. So what's in front of you now is a different format. I think it's clearer than what you normally look at, but the blue days are the professional development days, and again, the first 10 of the first 11 are taken from the student's school year. So first day of school then for us was Thursday, September 10th is the first day for students. And then we just had to, again, students are going 170 school days this year, not 180, because the opening 10 professional development days were taken from the student school year. The 11th day, we have a setup day in our teacher contract, so that was the 11th day. So what was left for us to schedule is we had 5 professional development days and a parent-teacher conference day. So we talked to the teachers union, talked to Patrick Larkin. They felt Wednesdays would be a good day for professional development days. They wanted them spread out throughout the year. They tried to align them with some other religious holidays. So you could see the blue days are the 5 professional development days. So the 3rd, the 18th, the 13th, 27th, the 10th, and the 31st. So those would be days where students would not be in school and would not be learning remotely. So we will, again, communicate this all from the building level again. Last day for students, June 14th. And then last day for teachers right now is June 15th. Why would I put the parent-teacher conference day at the end of the year? Is because we're probably going to have to go back to the teachers union to talk about what parent-teacher conferences are going to look like, because we don't want to have teachers in the parents in the building. If they're going to be remote, we're going to have to rethink that. So I just think we're going to need to eventually absorb that day or do something with that day that I didn't want it to get in the way. So I don't want any teachers to panic. We're not expecting a parent-teacher conference day the day after school's out. But I didn't want to put that day in the middle of a calendar when I'm not sure we can have any parents, when we'll have parents allowed in the building. So that's kind of why that day is there. Normally I build in 5 snow days, and I'm not building in 5 snow days this year because I think the commissioner for one more year is going to allow for remote instruction, and since we're doing remote instruction anyway, it seems sort of, I don't know what the right word is, it would be kind of silly for us to have a snow day where we couldn't say remote instruction could happen since we're doing remote instruction anyway. So I'm assuming in the future we would add a snow day. If there does happen to be a cancellation or a hurricane or a major power outage or something, we would just bump the day from the June 14th. But that's sort of what I wanted to get out to parents today. So without, again, I think I would need a vote on the calendar, Madam Chair, and then would get this posted. I'm not sure, we typically don't do a first reading or second reading, and because it's the middle of September, if you want to do, again, I think people were mostly interested in when the last day of school was, since we've already started, but this would give them some idea.
I'd make a motion to approve the Burlington School Calendar 2020-2021 as presented.
I'll second, but I do have a question.
Go ahead.
Dr. Conti, the way I read this, you've got March 31st as the parent conference, but that wasn't what I heard you say. So I'm just wondering if we're voting on what you said or what's in front of us.
No, what's in front of you? That was a typo. That's a PD day.
Okay.
The parent conference
The
day
March
is,
31st is a PD day?
yes.
So there's 6 PD days coming up.
No, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the 6th. I'm not seeing the 6th, Ms.
The
Simon.
31st. I see 2 in November, 2 in January, and 2 in March.
Oh, we still haven't decided about Election Day, so we were debating whether that should be a day off fully. Lots of people have said they want to serve that day, and so we were debating that. So I apologize I didn't
Okay.
make that clear. I just needed a little bit more time, but more than likely the 3rd is not going to be a professional
Okay.
development day.
All right.
Sure, go ahead.
On the second page, it says the last day of school, students and teachers, June 7th, June 15th. Should that 7th say 14th instead?
It should. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Any other keen-eyed members picking things up? Okay, if there's nothing else, we can take a vote. All those in favor of the calendar as presented with those 2 modifications?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, it's 5-0.
Madam Chair, before
Yes.
we move to the next item, I also wanted to just, given that we're talking about calendars and holidays, I just want to wish any of our Jewish families and students a Happy New Year. The holiday started Friday night. There's another holiday of Yom Kippur next week, and I hope it's a happy and a sweet year, and we all could use it. So whether you observe or not, wishing everyone a happy and a healthy New Year.
Yes, I think this year everybody celebrates it. Okay,
Okay, Madam Chair, the next agenda item
this reduction,
is a reduction. Again, I don't believe I need a vote this evening. I just wanted to have a conversation. We met with the town financial team, the town manager, assistant town manager, and chair of Ways and Means, and the vice chair of Ways and Means. And Burlington has seen a significant reduction in local revenues. So I think they said there was good news and bad news. The good news is the state has level funded the state funding for municipalities, and I believe Chapter 70 for schools. So we were level funded in terms of our state revenue. But Burlington's local receipts, I think, have been impacted by the pandemic significantly. If you could sort of design an economic challenge for a community, pandemic seems to be just incredibly well aligned with how Burlington typically gets its revenue. I think one example that was given to me is hotel revenues are 15% of where they were at this time last year. So there's just no way to make up that revenue. So I think
heard
that
30.
30%, you would know better than I. So I think the town has worked really hard to look at all areas where they could make some offsets to the reductions. Again, I don't think they can do that every year, but I think for this one year, they felt like they could not spend as much in the accommodated side of the account. But I think even in all their models, they still had about $700,000 where they needed to make a reduction in the operating budget. And because the town has to pass a balanced budget and they have to set a tax rate that actually supports the budget, I believe town meeting is going to make a $700,000 reduction in the town's overall operating budget at September town meeting, and that because we're about 50% of the operating budget, they would look for schools to carry about 50% of that. As you all know, that with sort of limited fiscal autonomy, bottom line autonomy, that unlike the town departments, we don't need to identify the individual lines where that reduction needs to come from. We just need to say by the end of the year, sort of we'll do our best to contribute to the reduction. And so that's why I'm not really expecting a vote tonight, because I can't tell you what line it's going to come from. And I'm just saying we're part of an overall community, and we'll do our best to meet that reduction. We are certainly looking at some additional COVID-related expenses. We do have some revenues that are coming in that are meant to provide COVID relief, and we're going to try to create that match up what our COVID needs are with that COVID, whatever that COVID relief is. I really don't want to use the COVID relief just to fill in the $350,000, because then when we start planning for fiscal '22, we would be starting $350,000 in the hole. So I'm really trying to use the money, the federal relief money, for sort of the one-time COVID-related issues that we're going to have. But those issues are going to be interesting and diverse. We sort of just heard today that we're going to be running the heaters and motors longer than we normally do, so our utility costs may be impacted by sort of a practice that we're doing. So we have hired extra teachers, but we do have, again, some COVID relief funds for the interim teachers that we hired. Our plan is, if we open back up, we wouldn't be carrying those teachers fully into next year. We wouldn't be ready in September. I think, Mr. Murphy, you mentioned at one of our prior meetings that probably not going to know until a few more weeks where all expenses, where they all are. I think I've been working with Nicole, and we'll do a formal report to the committee, but I wouldn't even know by town meeting what our final operating budget number is going to be yet, because we're still trying to staff. We're still trying to figure out what it is that we need. So I just don't want to be a tone-deaf partner in this. I do think the community's revenue is down. I know that the tax rate has to be set. I know that operating budgets have to be balanced, and we want to do our part. The town is very generous with schools, and so we'll try to do the best that we can. I think if we identify expenses that are related to COVID, that might be a separate conversation that we need to have. But if we can be fairly careful, we'll know, I think, better maybe by January what trajectory we're on. I think the town may have a better idea of where their revenues are by that time as well. But I just wanted to make you aware of what was asked of us, and that if town meeting sort of votes to reduce the operating budget so that the tax rate can be set, that we're going to be impacted by that, as you know, along with everyone else. So I don't feel like I'm providing you any answers yet, because I don't have them. But I do think it was a request that was made, and probably something that we'll experience at town meeting. And I believe the selectmen voted to support the reduction on the town side. Again, I don't think we need a vote, just because of how the school committee can operate, and plus I'm not prepared to tell you where the reduction would come from at this time.
Mr. Murphy.
I mean, we can't say that this request was unexpected. We've been hearing about it for the last month or two. And I would tend to agree with Dr. Conti that we're all in this together, and we should do our best to comply with the request. My concern is, sitting here now in late September, and as Dr. Conti mentioned, who knows where this is going to go. If it's going to last all year, that's a whole different financial impact than if it's over by December or whatever. So, I mean, my feeling is, and if we don't have to take an action on this, that's fine, but in my opinion, I think we should try to adjust our budget moving forward, and when Nicole makes her monthly reports, maybe we factor in a report showing where we measure up against the end of the year bottom line. Factor in a $350,000 reduction and try to use that as our target moving forward. But I think, at least I would say to the town administrative team and town meeting, is that in good conscience, I can't sit here and say for sure at the end of the year we can handle this, because you've gone through a whole list of things tonight that are gonna be extra expenses. And some of these, if we need 2 buses, that's 65,000 times 2. If we need PPEs for the rest of the year and not just through December, that's a whole bunch of more money. And so, from our,
Sorry. Pull your mic close so people can't hear you.
from my perspective, I'm willing to try to do this and go along with the request at this stage of the game. But in good conscience, I gotta reserve the ability to come back later on in the year, once things start solidifying a little bit. And if our circumstances are such that we can't afford that cut, or we even need more money, depending on how this thing goes, I think we have to reserve the right to bring that forward, be it a January town meeting or next May town meeting. But in the interim, I'm fine with giving it a shot, hoping that we can do it. Obviously, there's reduced revenues in the town. We haven't, at least I haven't been, anybody in the school committee, to my knowledge, has been part of the discussions to this point. I do know we have a stabilization fund in town with, last time I looked, that was around 3 or 4 million. We've got free cash that was certified at over 10 million. So we have other tools available to deal with things in a short term. And I think we're all kind of working this out as we go. But like I said, I would reserve the right to revisit this, I think, as a committee as we get into February, March, April, have a better handle on where we're at and where everything else is going. So that's my 2 cents.
Other people have comments? I'm going to mirror exactly what Mr. Murphy said, because that's my concern too, is there are too many unknowns right now. I mean, I think we need to be team players and, as he mentioned, and do what we can, but there's so much we don't know that it would be nice if we could reserve the right to reapproach it and talk over with, the subcommittee, Ways and Means Subcommittee, and have the open line of communication with them and through the town, just to make sure we do what's right, for the town and, for the school system. Martha? Carl?
Nothing to add, except that I agree both with Mr. Murphy and Ms. Bond. It's the business of running a school. The expenses don't go away, and in this unprecedented year, as we've discussed tonight and previous weeks, the expenses seem to grow. And I understand the position of the schools is that the town is very generous for us, and I appreciate your saying you want to work with them, but it's just, as Ms. Bond mentioned, too many question marks and not enough answers at this time. It's hard to commit to that type of reduction. And so I'm in agreement with what has been said so far.
So, Eric, if this gets passed at town meeting, does our budget number automatically get reduced by 350,000? Is that how it works? Or is the town waiting to see? And I don't know how it's working. Is it a real reduction of our budget so that when we go forward with our next budget guidelines for the next year, we have 350,000 less than what we thought we had?
Madam Chair, I believe that's the case, but I would need to ask for some clarification. I just know that the town's overall operating expenses are what drives the tax rate. So I think that they have to match up sort of those 2 things. There's not a separate tax rate for schools, obviously, but I think that they would need to reduce our operating budget as a contribution to the overall reduction in spending.
So I think every one of us, and I'm about to express the desire to help out, to be a team player, et cetera. I don't see the same issues in the other town departments that the school department has. The bringing kids back to school in the hybrid model and the full remote. We've added a whole new school remotely. We've added all the teachers we talked about earlier. We've shorted ourselves on both instructional assistants and IAs. We've put off filling permanent positions in clerical and custodial. I agree, I'm willing to try really hard, but I do think we need some recourse. I also think that Mr. Murphy and I, as the Ways and Means Subcommittee, should have some sort of communication with Ways and Means before town meeting.
Yeah, I will set that up, and again, I want to make sure I frame this a little bit differently, or that I frame it a particular way. So that the town's deficit is much larger than $700,000. So the town's deficit, I've heard different numbers, but say it's around 2.1, and I apologize if I'm off. So I think the town's first step was to protect town departments and school departments. I think they looked everywhere they possibly could to reduce operational expenses prior to asking us to reduce our operating budget. So again, I do think that effort was made, and again, I'm in a more normal year, a more typical year. I just think I would have a better idea of where we could contribute, where we could, maybe we don't turn on the heat for an extra week or something. Do you know what I'm saying? I think maybe we would have more control over that. And the other piece of this would be that if we have to go fully remote November 1st, and we modify our transportation contract, as a for instance, the 350 may not be an issue. So I just don't know, and I think that's kind of why I'm saying I think we just need a little bit more time. But I didn't want to go to town meeting and say no. I want to say, of course we'll try, but I just don't know at this time. And I think if we keep track of some of our COVID-related expenses, if there is a need for additional resources that are COVID-related, I think that's a different conversation than just saying we couldn't help out. I'm sorry.
My concern really is, well, is doing it in the first place, is cutting $350,000. Last year, we returned over $1 million. We ought to get a little credit for that. And depending on how things go, we could have more than this in excess, just like we did last year, if we have a bad year and we have to go fully remote and no buses and all that. But we don't know. We just don't know, and we have to provide a far better education for our kids than we did a year ago, or last spring, for instance. So I just want to work together to do what we can, but I think my biggest concern is, even if we're able to do it, is going into next year's budget already $350,000 behind, but that's something that we can talk about.
Yes.
Tom?
I just wanted to reinforce, and Eric touched on it, in looking across the town spectrum for the different departments, I don't think any of the other departments anywhere approach the additional expenses that we've incurred due to this slowdown. I think the other departments obviously were affected in some degree or another. But bringing in extra help, adding and subtracting buses, all of the other stuff that goes along with the day-to-day operating of a school, we have some inherent increases in expenses that make it very difficult to sit here and talk about decreasing our budget in a vacuum anyway. So I just want to, again, from my standpoint anyway, I want to reinforce the willingness to try to work with this and recognizing the revenue problem across the town. But at some point, it might be necessary to sit down and have the discussion with whether it's Ways and Means or the town administration or whomever, and rather than doing the ultimate cut in an arbitrary 50-50 percentage standpoint, maybe we look at it more and how the individual departments are actually affected by this situation, and and see who can handle things better than others. So it's too early to have those discussions, but I just want to make sure that everybody understands that I think we should be reserving our rights to continue those discussions as we move forward. There are different ways to address this if and when it becomes necessary, whether it's January town meeting, May town meeting, RFTs, warrant articles, all of the above. So if we find ourselves in a whole February, March timeframe, then we can talk about ways to deal with it.
One other thing, because it will really be on the floor of town meeting, well, on the WebEx of town meeting, that will be on the spot, really on the spot. So I know that I know the amount of time that you have put in, everyone has put into getting schools open and filling in the pieces and finding teachers for every spot. And to the extent possible, if you could ask Nicole, or working with Nicole, give us some sort of an understanding of what it's looking like by town meeting, I think it would at least give us sort of a push in the right direction as to whether we really feel like we can do it or we really feel like we can't.
By which town meeting?
September, when they're gonna cut it.
It's Monday.
Oh, crap. It's a week from Monday.
It's a week from yesterday.
Yeah, all right. All right,
Oh, it's
so
Wednesday.
if you can give us any idea
Sure.
by then.
No, again, and I think we're keeping track of our COVID-related expenses, but,
But
so-
it isn't that, Eric. It's all these people you've had to hire. And how many are you gonna have to, of the people you've moved into teaching spots, how many are you gonna have to backfill? How many IAs are you gonna need? How many tutors are you gonna need? You know, how many specialists that you've got doing classes are you gonna have to, move around?
no,
There's a lot of positions involved here.
Yes.
And every one of them costs money. Plus, we've got leaves going on where people are getting paid. And, I'm not looking for hard, detailed evidence. I just would like some sense of where we are.
No, and I guess what I was saying poorly is I think we can create some sense of the positions that we've had to add structurally. Again, offering a choice meant needing more resources. So if we didn't have students back in schools, we could have operated at in sort of in a different manner. So having all kids back in school, we probably would have looked more typical. So all I'm saying is it's the diversity of choice, or some of the choices that we have offered, that I think has added some expense. That's all.
And
So-
we're paying for the buses now, and we had a big discount on the buses in the spring.
Yeah, again, I think in the money that we returned in the spring, there really weren't any surprises. I think we showed you it was transportation, it was instructional materials, and I think there was some maintenance, or some other utilities, maintenance stuff that you would expect. So I'm saying, I think all the money we didn't expend was predictable with schools, buildings closed. I just think now, we essentially added an elementary school, a fifth elementary school that we created pretty quickly. And so I just think, even if you think about it that way, we've incorporated the expense of a fifth elementary school, even though there's no physical, there's no plant for the elementary school. There's still the staff and still some of the work that goes with that. So I think by having students trying to provide a high-quality remote and a high-quality in-person experience, created some expenses. We'll try to detail as much as we can some of those expenses, but I even think those are going to continue to take shape into October, and we'll make that happen. So
It's not like you had an extra $350,000 in the budget.
no, ma'am, we certainly did not. I can say that definitively. We didn't.
So
But,
now to take that out and do all of these extra things, it seems like a very difficult, if not impossible, task.
Well, again, I think we want to try.
We want to try.
And we'll try
We
to
will try.
figure it out.
Okay, anyone else have any whining to do like I just did? Okay. Organic school field maintenance.
I know this seems like a bit of a unrelated to what we're doing, but I think school committee voted to allocate $15,000 to aid the recreation maintenance department for the cost to provide organic field maintenance at Francis Wyman. The committee should discuss if they'd like the organic maintenance program to continue at the Francis Wyman field, as well as the funding for a second year. So this was really an item that Nicole put on to make sure that if you want to continue, that we would need to allocate the $15,000 to have the organic field maintenance continue. For the new committee members, this was a long discussion that the committee had last year, and I think something that the committee was in support of, so.
Mr. Murphy.
Yes, this was actually discussed at the rec meeting a week or two ago, a couple weeks ago, I guess. And Nicole had sent me a note on it. So I think Martha, Chris, and I certainly remember the discussions that we had. There was a whole thing about playing field maintenance. The rec department's been using a new subcontractor to do their fields, and they've had a pretty good result. And they want to do the same at Francis Wyman playing fields, and I think that's their main focus right now. But that's under our control, so they needed our permission. Some of the work that they're doing is not all organic. Our policy is to only use organic fertilizer and other materials on our fields. So it was the vote of the committee, if memory serves, to remain organic, all organic, but to offer $15,000 to the rec department maintenance division to supplement their subcontracting work, because they have an added cost to do this. So I believe that was in our budget back in May, and then with everything that's been going on, it kind of fell into the back burner, and Nicole reminded me of it a couple weeks ago. And I mentioned it to Brendan Egan, who's the recreation director, and we had a little talk about it, and said we'd bring it back up just to make sure, he wanted to make sure we're still on board with that, because now's the time of year that they want to start doing some work to the Francis Wyman field. And so I guess the question is, I think the money's in the budget. We just have to allocate it, give Bob, I guess, the green light to move it over to the recreation department so that they can do the field maintenance
You wanna
at
make
the
a
Francis
motion?
Wyman field. Do we need a motion? If it's in our budget? I don't think so.
So-
Oh, okay, we don't need
Yeah,
one.
I'd like some more clarification, because, so, first of all, is this money already in our budget? The $15,000 for the organic maintenance?
Yes.
Okay. This says for a second year. Are we talking about transferring money that's already been allocated, or are we talking about a second year? Because that's confusing to me.
No, the first year was the year that we didn't have the money in the budget, that we moved money over. We budgeted the 15,000. I think Nicole just wanted to make sure that you wanted to commit, your commitment is staying, and that we would transfer the money over to the Park and Rec department. So that's.
So they haven't done it yet during this
No.
operational
right around
budget?
now.
They do it around now,
In the fall.
in the
yes.
fall?
Yeah.
I'm a little reluctant to spend the money, if it's an option not to, although if we've made the commitment, then I would want to not renege on a commitment. So I'm not sure.
I guess, Ms. Simon, I would try, again, it's all about framing for me, and I'm sorry, and $15,000 is a lot to us individually. I think that in the grand scheme of a $68 million budget, it's not going to make a difference on the positions that we are sort of talking about or anything else there. And I think with field maintenance, having listened to you also intently last year about organic field maintenance, that it's about consistency, and if you miss a year, it's going to end up being more expensive in the long run. So again, my suggestion would be fields are important for safety reasons. There are kids out playing on the fields. If you want to do the organic stuff, then you got to stick with it. So my advice would just be to stick with the plan.
So this is for the money that we've already budgeted?
Yes.
Okay.
Would you
Do we have a second for the motion?
Well, there is no motion. We
Oh,
decided we didn't
decided
need
not-
one.
Okay.
Is there someone who has a question? Can you wait 1 second? Could you ask for an indication from Rec of what they did with the last 15 and what they're doing with this? Like, have they changed what they were doing on those fields, on our fields? I mean, we're giving them money. I want to make sure they're using it and using it in organic.
I mean, I'll confirm that, but
Yeah.
that's the plan. It's the, I forget the name of the subcontract, Tom Irwin.
Yeah,
And
Tom Irwin?
that,
Okay.
that was the number that they quoted for the additional amount of materials that are going to be necessary to do that program on the Francis Warren
I
Field.
just want to make sure it's really happening.
Yeah, I'll confirm it, but
Okay,
I'm
and is
sure
there
it is.
someone who has a question?
If I could just comment, so my recollection is that this conversation happened prior to us leaving for COVID, and the
Right.
intent was that the rec department would also fund half of it through their budget as well. The first treatment did happen already this summer, and the overseeding part of it. So
Good.
this is a multi-process that was supposed to happen. The second phase would be in October. And at this time, I don't believe they're asking for additional monies. It was just the 15 that was appropriated for in this year. But again, one treatment was already performed, so
That's good to know.
I guess at some point, my point is that we would obviously need to, make whole on that part of it. But then there was also overseeding, aerating, and other parts to that field as well too, which totaled that money that we were appropriating. So.
Perfect. Anything else?
So I would like us to follow through then, and if you don't need a motion, it sounds like, I don't know if other people have
Yeah, Paul
comments.
didn't ask for a motion, I think you just wanted to double check that you're committed to following through on the program. So that's really what I needed.
Okay. If Kristen's watching, she'll be glad to hear
Yes.
that.
I was going to say that, I remember the whole discussion.
Yeah. So that is there anything else to come before the committee? That seems to be the end of our public agenda. No?
And Madam Chair, I do not believe we have need for an executive session.
Oh, good.
Actually,
sorry?
that reminds me, I was under the understanding that we might be able to announce a tentative agreement. Is that not an option?
Again, I think we certainly can. Just say that, I guess I was going to wait until the BEA sort of took a more formal vote, but I do want to recognize the many hours that Ms. Monaco, Ms. Simon put into working with the BEA. I want to thank the teachers who also put in a tremendous amount of time, and I think that the conversations were professional and productive, and I think we always leave those conversations learning more about what the teachers' needs are in the classroom and what the community's values are. And I have to say, having sort of observed them over 12, 13 years, that more likely than not, the values of what's needed in the classroom and the values of this community align very well. So again, I just want to thank everyone for their time. We did reach a tentative agreement with the negotiating team. I think the agreement will go before the entire membership, and then will come before this committee afterwards. So, and I think it's really just a start, and we did commit to continuing to have labor management conversations moving forward, because so much of this is unknown that we're going to bump into things that we just didn't know about, and these conversations are going to be ongoing. So again, just want to thank everyone for their time, and the teachers put in full days and then spent many hours bargaining after that, and really trying to represent what's best for their membership. So again, I think hopefully next meeting we'll have the opportunity to ratify the memorandum, and then move on. And this is also a contract year, so we're going to have to move on to fiscal 22 and the larger contract, probably in the October, November timeframe, so coming up pretty quickly.
If I could also just, I didn't introduce it with a whole context, but for people who are watching, if it's not clear, we were not negotiating a contract with the teachers' union, but the school district and the teachers were having a negotiation and discussions about all the different working conditions and health and safety and conditions of teaching. So that's what we're talking about, is a memorandum of agreement, and we are hoping that we will be able to vote on it soon. Thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing else to come before the committee, and if there's no need for executive session, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.